David Axelrod laid into Bob Woodward on Morning Joe this morning, trying to get him to admit that he had mischaracterized a series of emails between himself and Gene Sperling that have been making news all this week. But before we get to the actual attack on Woodward, let's walk you back through what's happened over the course of this week. So first we have Woodward saying that he had never said that he had been threatened.
And I want to know how you got there in terms of that was a watch out point of view statement.
Well, it was not a I never said it was a threat. Politico was doing this story about the column that I wrote on Sunday calling out the administration. And so I mentioned that I got an email from somebody, like lots of things in Washington, then the details leaked out.
Okay, and here we've got Woodward on CNN saying that the emails had made him uncomfortable.
And it was said to me in an email by a top.
What was said? Yeah.
It was said very clearly. You will regret doing this.
Who sent that email to you?
Well, I'm not going to say.
Was it
it's
a
somebody,
senior person at the White House?
A very senior person, and just as a man, it makes me very uncomfortable to have the White House telling reporters you're going to regret doing something that you believe in. I think if Barack Obama knew that was part of the communications strategy, let's hope it's not a strategy, but that it's a tactic that somebody's employed, he'd say, look, we don't go around trying to say to reporters, if you, in an honest way, present something we don't like, that you're going to regret this.
So wait a minute, that sounds like he felt like he was threatened.
Yeah.
So where's the part where he says he's not threatened?
That's
okay,
Washington.
Interesting. Well, you said part of there was quaint. What was that?
Well, when he said if Barack Obama knew that his press people were going around threatening reporters, I'm sure he would be ashamed of them.
Sure,
So I'm trying to which I started laughing because immediately, I think probably after that, David Plouffe, who's one of the senior advisors, wrote this tweet where he said, basically compared Woodward to a washed-up Major League Baseball player and sort of dancing on his career. I'm like, that's like Obama's guy. So I would think that the president is quite aware of.
And what Woodward is doing there, somewhat subtly, is telling the president, hey, unless you want this to damage you, you better have your guys back off.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a counter threat to some degree.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and this is I did a column I wrote a column on BuzzFeed last night, and we published it this morning, where basically I say, look, okay, there's all sorts of faults about Bob Woodward that you can list, but essentially here. We all know that the Obama administration, in fact, has been very hostile to the press. I mean, if you look at Bradley Manning, look at the 7 whistleblowers, you go down the list of things that they've done that are very hostile to the press. Now, it used to be the sort of marginal figures would get that treatment, but now you see where a top advisor is not afraid to scream at Bob Woodward, which I guarantee you the real threat and why it shook him up was that he was yelled at on the phone, which I did not do the reporting, but I'm going to speculate and say that probably has not happened to Bob Woodward in a number of years. So if this White House feels that they can intimidate Bob Woodward, they can throw, it goes, it's not just the fringe, it's not just sort of the marginal figures like Bradley Manning who are being punished by them, it goes all the way up into the sort of gentlemanly corridors of power. So anyway, that's my counter, that's my defense of Woodward on that point.
So in a sense that they were being subtly aggressive with Woodward, but look,
he wrote a column calling him out, and they've spent this whole week pushing back. I mean, you have Axelrod attacking him, Plouffe. I mean, and they're very right. If he got it wrong, they're right to attack him. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that he didn't immediately roll over and say, "Oh yeah, I'm totally wrong about what I said," even though he could in fact. But he's confident in his version. He's questioning the White House official line, and they push back on this stuff all the time. They lie. They just are always lying about stuff like this. So,
right. No, that's a really interesting spin on it because you're right. I mean, and I think that Woodward was half right, half wrong. I think he was half wrong that Obama's moving the goalposts because they had said it clearly, and it's in the act, that if you get rid of the sequester, that revenues can be a part of the deal, right? So and Woodward said that that's not the case, and he's just wrong about that.
Right.
But he is right that the sequester idea did come from the White House. They don't like to hear that either because they want to blame the Republicans. So if you're pushing back on that, great.
Yeah.
And if Woodward doesn't push back, the Washington Post doesn't push back, nobody's going to push back, right? So that's a positive. I'll grant you that. He just, by blowing it up out of proportion, he lost a lot of credibility. And that's the next point that we get to.
It's the way that he framed it. But anyway, so let's
Because people
watch.
were shocked. People were shocked that they would yell at Woodward. I mean, Wolf Blitzer's on like, did the White House really say something mean to you, Bob Woodward?
Yeah.
I mean, well, I got an email today from someone who's leaving the White House, and he said, I swear to God, I have emails that would make Gene Sperling blush. I mean, this is standard operating procedure nowadays. These sort of real threats often.
Okay, so really fast, why don't we actually take a look at what Axelrod said.
The headline in the Washington Post, your newspaper, was Woodward says that he was threatened
But I
by
never
the White
have.
House. So I don't know whether you've spoken to your editors about that, but they got the impression from what you said that you felt you were being threatened, and you just read to the Politico one line from that email, and when the full emails came out, they were as cordial as can be. His email was cordial, and your response was cordial. So if you felt threatened, why didn't you say to Gene, don't threaten me?
Bob? No, I did not feel threatened. You know what I have said, David, and come on. You were putting words in my mouth. I said, I don't think this is the way to operate.
Well, so, look, Michael's right that Woodward doesn't write the headlines, right? Of course not, right? But at the same time, Woodward did get his hand caught in the cookie jar, because then you have the Woodward email back to Gene Sperling saying, oh, Gene, don't worry about it. We're buddies. Yeah, everything's totally fine. Then he goes on TV. He's like, can't you believe the way that they came after me, right? You got busted on that one. You did.
And it is, look, Woodward now is this sort of patrician-like figure, kind of almost considered an elder statesman in Washington, and so he's not used to sort of this kind of criticism like this, like being called out like this. So that's also interesting as well, that they feel that they can kind of push him around, and that's good for the White House too, if you can. If it seems like Bob Woodward is. But the other thing, Woodward is also one of the most savage and vicious and show no mercy reporters of his generation. I mean, the trail, my favorite part of the email is when Sperling says, oh, as a friend, back off. You could go through the list of a lot of Woodward's friends who've all been fired after Woodward wrote a book about them, going back. I mean, this is a guy who is best known for, besides Watergate, of getting the deathbed confession of the former CIA chief, that nobody knows what really happened there, snuck into the hospital to get this guy's last words. He did that on other occasions to other people, So Woodward is someone who, it's funny for him to be saying like, oh, let's be civil and that's not how to operate, where he in fact shows no mercy, but it's all within this sort of fake gentlemanly, corridors of power sort of mentality, and that's what offended him. He was sort of personally offended that they would treat him like this. That's what I read.
One more thing about Woodward. The comparison of Woodward and Manning always drives me crazy. Because, Woodward, speaking of, the scoops that he's gotten, et cetera, in his books, have literally gotten the most highly classified top secret information and put it in his books. A paramilitary group that the CIA was running in Afghanistan, there's nothing more top secret than that. Right. And he just printed it, right?
The code name of a top secret program.
Yeah, and so why is he not in some sort of prison facing a life sentence? Well, he's Woodward, right? I'd love Bradley Manning to be like, but I'm Bradley Manning, right? So I'm free to go, right? So that's why, to your point, Michael, when he's challenged a little bit, he's like, what on God's green earth are you doing? I'm Bob effing Woodward.
But that's, for sure.